The battlefield was silent now, except for the crackle of fire and the moans of the dying. Among the wreckage lay an alien warrior, her once mighty armor shattered, her legs torn away in the chaos of war. Her own comrades had abandoned her, leaving her to bleed into the dirt. For them, she was already dead, but to him, the human Marine who found her, she was something else. She was the enemy, yes, but she was also alive. Her green skin was scorched, her breath shallow, her eyes blazing with the same desperate will to survive that he'd seen in countless soldiers, human or not. His orders were clear: eliminate all enemy survivors. No exceptions. Yet as he knelt beside her, weapon trembling in his grip, he felt a war raging inside himself. Was she truly his enemy, or just another soul crushed by the endless cycle of violence? In that moment, one choice could change everything: a soldier's loyalty to command, or his loyalty to something greater. Mercy. He extended his hand, and for the first time in history, a human and an alien stood not as enemies, but as the last hope for each other. The desert battlefield stretched endlessly under a crimson sky, a wasteland scarred by fire and ash. Smoke curled upward from burning wrecks of alien war machines and shattered human transports. The ground itself seemed to tremble, still remembering the weight of the battle that had raged only hours ago. Broken armor plates, discarded weapons, and lifeless bodies of both species littered the sand. War had no mercy here, only silence after the storm. Among the wreckage, a figure stirred. She was an alien warrior, once fierce and commanding, now broken and bleeding. Her skin, a shade of emerald scorched with burns, glistened with sweat and blood. The ornate armor she wore was cracked and blackened, its once impenetrable design shattered by heavy artillery. Her breathing was shallow, ragged. Where her legs had been, only charred flesh and mangled metal remained. The blast that had taken them had stolen not only her strength, but the certainty of her survival. Her comrades had fled long before the smoke had cleared. In their eyes, she was already a corpse, too damaged to save, too much of a burden to carry. Abandoned in the dirt, she was left to die slowly under the weight of her failure. Her voice, hoarse and trembling, cried out in her language, but the vast desert swallowed every sound. She dragged herself across the sand, clawing with fingers sharpened by years of combat training. Every movement was agony, every breath fire in her lungs. The battlefield, once her stage of honor, had become her grave. She tasted blood on her lips and felt her vision blur, shadows closing in from every side. That was when she heard footsteps. At first, she thought it was death itself, coming for her at last. But the shape that emerged from the haze was human. A soldier clad in heavy combat armor, his visor cracked, but his eyes sharp with determination. A Marine. His rifle was strapped across his chest, his movements steady, cautious, like a predator who knew the battlefield could still bite. He saw her, and for a long moment, he simply froze. Every instinct drilled into him screamed a single order: eliminate the enemy. That was his mission, his duty. No hesitation, no mercy. Yet as his gaze lingered on her, broken and gasping, something within him faltered. She was the enemy, yes, but she was also suffering. There was no weapon in her hands, no fight left in her body. Only pain. The Marine's grip on his sidearm tightened. He could end it now, fulfill his orders with a single shot. The trigger itched under his finger. He raised the weapon, yet he did not fire. Instead, he crouched down. The alien warrior snarled weakly, her voice laced with defiance, even as blood stained her lips. She tried to push herself back, as if even now she would rather die fighting than submit to pity. But her strength failed her, and she collapsed into the dirt, trembling. The Marine's breath came heavy inside his helmet. He saw the charred wounds on her legs, the smoke rising from melted armor, the sheer willpower that kept her conscious. And in that moment, he did not see a monster, nor a sworn enemy. He saw a soldier, like himself. Someone who had given everything to the war and received only abandonment in return. He holstered his weapon. "Easy," he whispered, though he knew she could not understand his words. His voice was calm, almost gentle, so unlike the chaos of the battlefield around them. From his utility belt, he pulled out a med pack. The device hummed to life, lights flickering across its surface. Her eyes widened. Suspicion flickered there. Why would a human help her? Yet there was also desperation. She was caught between pride and survival, her instinct screaming to reject his aid, while her body begged for it. The Marine extended his hand slowly, making sure she could see every movement. He kept his other hand clear of his weapon, a silent promise that he meant no harm. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with the faintest tremor, her clawed fingers reached out. She gripped his hand. It was not the grip of an enemy, nor of a prisoner. It was the grip of someone with nothing left. Trust given not because it was deserved, but because it was the only hope left to cling to. The Marine steadied her and began applying the med pack, the hiss of healing foam filling the silence between them. She winced, teeth bared, but endured it. He worked quickly, sealing burns and stabilizing her pulse. Each movement defied the orders echoing in his mind, each second bringing him closer to the line between loyalty and treason. When he finally met her gaze again, something had shifted. The battlefield no longer felt like just ruin and death. In the midst of war, a spark of something else had been born. Not victory, not defeat, but a fragile, dangerous bond between two sworn enemies who, for this moment, were simply survivors. The desert wind howled through the ruins, carrying with it the stench of burning oil and scorched flesh. The Marine knelt in silence, his armored gloves sticky with alien blood as he sealed the worst of her wounds. Every second that passed weighed on him like a stone. His orders echoed in his mind. No enemy survives. It was the first command drilled into every soldier of his battalion, the one rule they were never allowed to question. And yet here he was, questioning everything. The alien warrior lay still, her breath shallow, but steady now. Her golden eyes followed his every move, narrowed with suspicion, but not hatred. Hatred required strength, something she no longer possessed. What remained was resilience, the will to endure, and a quiet dignity even as her body failed her. He should have left her. He should have stood, raised his rifle, and finished it cleanly. That would have been mercy of another kind, a swift end, instead of this slow agony. But when he looked at her, weapon trembling in his grip, he couldn't bring himself to do it. Something inside him rebelled, some stubborn fragment of humanity refusing to let go. "Why am I doing this?" he muttered under his breath. Words meant for no one but himself. His voice cracked in the emptiness, and for a moment, he almost expected her to answer. She tried to speak, her tongue curling around guttural sounds foreign to his ear. The syllables rasped out, broken by pain, but he could feel the weight behind them. He didn't understand the language, but he understood the tone. Defiance. She was telling him she would not beg. The Marine stared at her, struck by the sheer audacity of it. Even legless, bleeding, abandoned, she was still proud. That pride demanded his respect in a way orders never could. He pulled his helmet off, letting the hot desert air sting his face. The woman flinched at first, startled by the gesture, but then her gaze softened, curiosity flickering through exhaustion. Without the visor between them, he felt exposed, vulnerable, but also strangely honest. She could see him now not as a faceless soldier, but as a man. He reached for his canteen and offered it to her. She hesitated, her clawed hand twitching in uncertainty. Was this a trick? Would the water be poisoned? Her people had told stories of human cruelty, of their deceit, and yet thirst gnawed at her throat like fire. With slow deliberation, she accepted. Her lips pressed against the metal, and she drank greedily, the water spilling down her chin. The Marine watched, almost mesmerized. It was such a simple act, sharing water, but it felt monumental. For the first time in this endless war, a human and an alien were not enemies, but survivors. The Marine leaned back on his heels, struggling to steady his breathing. He knew what this meant. If his squad found out, he would be branded a traitor. Harboring the enemy was punishable by death. The military didn't tolerate mercy. Mercy was weakness, and weakness killed. He thought of his commander's voice, cold and unwavering. Obey, or be replaced. But then he looked at her again, at the way her chest rose and fell, at the faint flicker of determination in her weary eyes. She wasn't his commander's enemy. She wasn't a target on a screen or a statistic in a briefing room. She was real. Flesh, blood, pain, and fear, just like him. Something shifted inside him then. He realized he could not see her as anything but a person, and once he admitted that truth to himself, killing her was no longer an option. He stood, slinging his rifle across his back. She tensed, half expecting him to finally end it, but instead, he extended his hand once more. His gesture was clear. I will not leave you here. Her brow furrowed, confusion flashing across her face. This was unthinkable. No human had ever shown such defiance of their own kind. Yet the sincerity in his expression, the steadiness in his eyes, told her it was not a trap. Slowly, reluctantly, she reached out again. Her claws wrapped around his wrist, weaker than before, but still firm. It was a fragile truce, born not from trust, but from necessity. He lifted her carefully, supporting her ruined body as if she were fragile glass. Every movement was an act of rebellion against the war itself. He could feel the weight of what he was doing pressing down on him, but he no longer cared. In that moment, the Marine made his choice, not the choice of a soldier, but of a man. He chose mercy as he secured her across his shoulders, her blood staining his armor. He knew the path ahead would be harder than any battle he had fought. He was carrying not just her weight, but the burden of defiance, the decision to value a life over an order. Behind them, the battlefield still smoldered, a graveyard of obedience and destruction. Ahead, an uncertain journey awaited, but together, in silence, they took the first step. And though neither of them spoke the same tongue, both understood. Their lives were now bound by that single, impossible choice. The desert night fell quickly, blanketing the battlefield in shadows. Where the day had been brutal and scorching, the darkness brought a bone-deep chill. The Marine trudged forward, his body aching beneath the weight of the alien warrior draped across his shoulders. Her blood stained his armor, warm at first, now cold against the metal. Every step was a test of endurance, every breath a reminder of the madness he had chosen. She stirred weakly, her claws tightening against his chest plate as if anchoring herself to the living. He paused, lowering her carefully to the sand. Her golden eyes flickered open, glowing faintly in the moonlight. She looked at him, and though her voice was hoarse, a low growl escaped her lips, words he couldn't understand. "I don't know what you're saying," he muttered, crouching beside her. His helmet lay clipped at his belt, exposing his face to the bitter cold. "But I'm not leaving you." The alien warrior's gaze narrowed, as though measuring the truth of his words. She touched the bandages he had wrapped around her legs, inspecting his work. A sharp hiss left her throat, but it wasn't anger, more like reluctant acknowledgement. She knew she lived because of him, though pride kept her from admitting it. The Marine unpacked a ration kit, breaking apart the sealed bar of nutrient paste. He offered half to her. Suspicion flickered in her eyes again. She sniffed it, snarled softly, but hunger betrayed her. She snatched it from his hand and bit into it, grimacing at the unfamiliar taste, but swallowing anyway. For the first time, he laughed. The sound startled her. It wasn't mocking. It was weary, almost humanly absurd. "Guess food tastes like dirt no matter what species you are," he said, though she couldn't understand. Still, something shifted between them. Over the next hours, they settled into a fragile rhythm. He tended to her wounds, speaking to her in soft tones, even though she didn't understand. She watched him carefully, memorizing his patterns, his movements. In return, she attempted to gesture with her hands, clawed fingers tracing shapes in the air. Sometimes he guessed right: water, fire, pain. Other times, she growled in frustration, shaking her head. Yet with every attempt, the wall between them chipped away, stone by stone. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with pale orange light, the Marine scouted the wreckage nearby. He scavenged what he could: a torn tarp for shelter, scraps of metal for a fire pit, and a half-burnt alien energy cell that, surprisingly, still hummed faintly with power. When he returned, the warrior had dragged herself closer to the shade of a crumbled wall, refusing to remain useless. Her pride demanded she contribute, even if her body betrayed her. She held a shard of broken armor in her hand like a makeshift blade, her eyes alert, guarding their fragile camp. "You don't quit, do you?" he murmured, setting the supplies down. She tilted her head, not understanding, but his tone made her blink once, almost like she recognized respect when she heard it. That night, as the fire crackled between them, he studied her features more closely. The ridges across her forehead, the faint bioluminescence in her veins, the scars etched into her green skin, all marks of battles survived. She wasn't beautiful by human standards, but she was striking, unforgettable, a living testament to strength carved by war. She, in turn, studied him. Without his helmet, he seemed fragile compared to her kind. Softer skin, duller eyes, no claws or fangs. And yet, his endurance surprised her. He carried her, fed her, protected her, though she was his sworn enemy. Why? That question gnawed at her with every passing hour. On the third night, a sandstorm swept across the desert, howling winds tearing at their makeshift shelter. The Marine wrapped the tarp tightly around her, shielding her body with his own. The storm battered him relentlessly, sand scraping against his skin, filling his lungs. She watched him endure it silently, her clawed hand gripping his arm as though tethering herself to him. In that moment, she realized his strength wasn't in claws or armor. It was in his stubborn refusal to abandon her. When the storm finally passed, they collapsed side by side, exhausted. She reached out, pressing her claw gently against his chest, where his heart thudded beneath. Her eyes met his questioning. He placed his hand over hers, steady, firm, as if to say, "Yes, I'm alive, and so are you." Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In the harsh silence of the wasteland, two enemies became something else entirely, partners bound by survival. The war still raged beyond the horizon. Their people still thirsted for blood, but here, in the ashes of battle, they had carved out a fragile sanctuary. It was fragile, yes. Dangerous, even. But for the first time since the war began, they weren't alone. The fragile peace they had built did not last long. It began with the distant thrum of engines. The Marine froze, ears straining in the silence. Dust clouds rose on the horizon, vehicles, human patrol. His heart lurched into his throat. For days, he and the alien warrior had carved out a tenuous survival, hidden from both armies. Now, his own people were closing in, She noticed the change in his posture immediately. Her golden eyes narrowed as she followed his gaze to the horizon. Her claws dug into the sand, her body tense despite her wounds. She could sense his fear, not for himself, but for her. "Stay quiet," he whispered, even though she couldn't understand. He shifted, placing himself between her and the approaching squad. For a moment, the fire crackling between them seemed to burn hotter, as if protesting the inevitable storm about to fall. The armored carriers screeched to a halt nearby, boots pounding against steel as soldiers fanned out in formation. The Marine recognized them instantly. His squad, his brothers in arms, faces he had fought beside, laughed with, bled with. They were here to rescue him. Or so they thought. "Sergeant Hale," one of them called, spotting him. Relief colored the soldier's voice. "We thought you were dead out here." The Marine, Hale, straightened, forcing calm into his features. "I made it," he said. His voice felt heavy, as though each word cost him something. But then the others saw her. The alien warrior lay against the wall of their makeshift shelter, wrapped in bandages and tarp. She met their stares head-on, defiance flickering in her weary eyes. Even broken, she refused to appear weak. "Contact!" another soldier shouted, raising his rifle. The squad snapped into action, weapons aimed at her chest. "No!" Hale barked, stepping forward, blocking their line of fire. The squad froze, confusion etching across their visors. "What the hell are you doing, Sergeant?" their commander demanded, voice sharp as a blade. "Stand down. We'll take care of it." Hale's pulse thundered in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him to obey, but his body refused to move aside. "She's not a threat," he said firmly. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Not a threat. She's the enemy. You've been out here too long. Hale, you're not thinking straight." "I am," Hale shot back. He felt the alien's gaze on him, unwavering. "She's wounded, helpless. Killing her isn't war, it's slaughter." The silence that followed was suffocating. The squad looked at one another, torn between loyalty to their sergeant and obedience to command. Finally, the commander stepped closer, lowering his voice, so only Hale could hear. "Orders are orders. You know what's at stake. This war isn't about mercy. It's about survival. If you can't follow through, then you're already one of them." The words cut deep, but Hale stood his ground. That was when the alien warrior spoke. Her voice was raw, strained, but steady. None of the humans understood her language, but the intent was clear. She was not begging. She was daring them. Her pride burned brighter than her pain, and for a moment, even the soldiers hesitated. Then Hale said the words he knew would change everything. "If you want her dead, you'll have to go through me." Gasps rippled through the squad. Betrayal. Treason. Their sergeant standing against his own. The commander's face hardened. "You've lost it." He raised his rifle, leveling it at Hale, and that was when the revelation came. The alien warrior, struggling to speak, rasped out a single phrase, broken, halting, but in their language. "Not your enemy." The squad froze. Shock rippled through them. Hale turned to her wide-eyed. You understand us." Her gaze burned with truth. She nodded weakly, then forced out more words, each syllable costing her pain. "War, lie. Enemy created." Hale's blood ran cold. He knelt beside her, desperate. "What do you mean?" With trembling hands, she traced a symbol in the sand, a crest Hale recognized. Not alien, human, the mark of their high command. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Doubt flickered in their eyes. If what she said was true, then everything, the war, the endless killing, was built on deception. "Enough!" the commander barked, but his voice lacked conviction. "Don't listen to her tricks." But Hale saw it in the alien's eyes. This wasn't manipulation. It was confession. She had no reason to lie, not here, not now. The foundation of his loyalty cracked beneath him. If command had manufactured the war, then mercy wasn't treason. It was truth. He stood tall, shielding her once more. "Then maybe the real enemy isn't out there," he said, glaring at the commander. "Maybe it's the ones giving the orders." The air turned electric. Guns remained raised, but hesitation spread like wildfire. No one wanted to be the first to pull the trigger. For the first time, Hale realized this wasn't just about saving her. This was about uncovering the lie that chained them all. The standoff stretched into eternity. Rifles aimed, breaths held, and in the center stood Hale, shielding the broken alien warrior as though she were the last fragile ember in a dying fire. His squad shifted uneasily, caught between loyalty to command and the sudden, terrifying possibility that everything they had been told was a lie. The commander's voice broke the silence. "Stand down, Sergeant. Final warning." But Hale didn't move. His hand hovered near his rifle, not in aggression, but in defiance. He felt the alien warrior's eyes on his back, steady, unwavering. She had risked her last breath to reveal the truth. He couldn't let that truth die here. Then the earth trembled. At first, it felt like an aftershock of the battle. But the tremors grew stronger, deeper. From the horizon came a low mechanical roar, unlike anything human or alien. Massive silhouettes emerged from the dust. Towering machines, their forms grotesque amalgamations of alien and human design. Hale's stomach dropped. These weren't soldiers. They were war machines, manufactured monsters. And stamped across their plating was the same crest the alien had drawn in the sand, the mark of human command. The squad faltered, confusion spreading like wildfire. "What the hell is that?" one soldier muttered. The alien warrior rasped weakly, her voice trembling but urgent. "Not us. Them." The revelation struck Hale like a blade. This was it, the real enemy. Not alien or human, but the architects of war themselves. Machines built to keep both species locked in endless conflict, controlled by those who profited from blood. The commander's mask cracked for the first time. His hands trembled as he lowered his rifle. He had known. He had always known. "You lied to us," Hale said, his voice like thunder. The commander said nothing. His silence was confession enough. The machines opened fire. Bolts of searing energy tore into the sand, scattering the squad. Hale dove to shield the alien warrior, dragging her behind a wall of rubble. Explosions rocked the earth, tearing apart what little sanctuary they had built. "Fall back," someone shouted, but retreat was impossible. The machines were closing in, their weapons shredding everything in their path. Hale's pulse surged with a clarity he had never felt before. Orders meant nothing now. Survival, truth, and the fragile bond he had forged. That was all that mattered. He turned to her. "Can you fight?" Her golden eyes blazed with defiance, though her body trembled with weakness. Slowly, she lifted the shard of broken armor she had kept close, holding it like a blade. Her answer was clear. Together, they moved. Hale fired controlled bursts at the machines, targeting joints and sensors. The alien, though weakened, used her knowledge of their hybrid design to point out weak spots with gestures and guttural cries. Each kill was a dance of desperation, man and alien moving as one. The squad, shaken but inspired, joined the fight. Doubt had cracked their faith in command, but Hale's defiance lit something new inside them, a reason to fight that wasn't born of blind obedience. Still, the machines kept coming. For every one that fell, two more advanced. The air burned with smoke and plasma fire. Hale's rifle overheated, his armor scorched, but he refused to yield. Then the alien warrior collapsed. Her wounds had opened again, blood soaking through the bandages. Hale dropped to his knees beside her, panic clawing at his chest. "No," he whispered fiercely, gripping her hand. "You don't get to die here. Not like this." Her golden eyes flickered, fading, but then she pressed something into his palm. A crystalline shard, glowing faintly. Her voice rasped. "Core, destroy core." Hale understood. The machines had a central power source. If he could destroy it, the tide would turn. He rose, adrenaline burning through exhaustion, with the squad covering him. He charged toward the largest machine, its core pulsing with blue light. Gunfire and explosions ripped around him. But he kept running, every step fueled by her trust. He leapt onto the machine's frame, driving the shard into its exposed heart. For a moment, the world went silent. Then the core erupted in a blinding explosion. The blast consumed the battlefield. When the dust settled, the machines were gone. Silence returned, heavy and final. The squad staggered to their feet, stunned, alive. Hale crawled back to her side, his body trembling. She was still breathing, faint, but steady. Her eyes met his one last time, and in that gaze was something more than survival. Respect, gratitude, perhaps even something like kinship around them. The squad looked to Hale, not as a traitor, but as a leader. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. The war wasn't what they thought, and now they carried a choice: return to their masters and continue the lie, or forge a new path. Hale lifted her gently, cradling her against his chest. His voice was steady, unyielding. No more lies, no more war. For the first time in history, a human and an alien had stood together against the true enemy, and in the ashes of the battlefield, hope was born.